Many Chinese people, faced with the turmoil in Sino-US relations, many Chinese people are very anxious. This article will remove unnecessary anxiety from people. 1. Why have the military capabilities of China and the United States changed to today? No matter how people judge the development of Sino-US relations, the most fundamental basis is the changes in the relative strength of the two sides, especially the military strength. Only by seeing this clearly can we understand why China has the current attitude towards the United States. Before Blinken, if there is a war, how many serious military blows will China's coastal cities receive? Anyone can say harsh words, but the question is whether you have the military strength. To clearly understand the current situation of the comparison of military capabilities between China and the United States today, we need to go back to 30 years ago. At that time, many major international events happened one after another. The disintegration of the Soviet Union, the great changes in Eastern Europe, and the modern warfare displayed by the US military in the First Gulf War shocked the world, and also shocked the Chinese leadership and military in a cold sweat. In early 1992, during Xiaoping's southern tour, when he left Zhuhai, he turned his head and said to the local officials, "You need to be quicker, be more courageous, and move faster." It can be said that his anxiety was blatantly expressed. Why so anxious? Of course, it is very clear that China's military capabilities at that time were objectively in a state of self-defense. Since then, China has begun to change the past policy of the military, temporarily giving way to economic development, and gradually set up more and more military projects. What is the goal of China's military-industrial project? Obviously, it is to deal with the military capabilities of the United States. But at that time, ordinary Chinese people had little anxiety, because it was impossible to imagine that China would face the risk of war. At that time, the annual economic growth rate was about 10%, and the highest annual economic growth rate reached 14.2%, 1992. Everyone was busy making money, so there was no time to worry. And the reason for this is that at that time, the United States did not really take China seriously at all. Faced with a gap of more than 16 times, $6.174 trillion $0.3795 trillion 1991 data, between the two sides in terms of GDP and economic aggregate, the gap in military technology generation compared with the advantages and disadvantages of the level, the United States really does not need to worry about anything. Even in the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis 5 years later, the US military only needed to dispatch 2 aircraft carrier battle groups, which was enough to form an overwhelming conventional military advantage over the entire Chinese People's Liberation Army. Therefore, the United States really did not exert any real pressure on China at that time, so of course ordinary Chinese people would not feel any pressure on Sino-US relations. That is to say, from this time on, the US military has entered the era of one superpower and many powers, and the multiple powers are mainly the friends of the United States in NATO. Therefore, at the same time when China's military began a strategic transformation, the US military began a strategic process of seeking defeat alone and constantly killing itself in an all-round way. Only when we fully understand this point can we fundamentally understand why China has begun to surpass the US military in all military technologies today, while the US military just misplaced the root of the technology tree in all military fields. It has been a full 30 years since this transformation. It is not a year or two, let alone a transformation that can happen in a day or two. 2. Comparison of Chinese and American Air Forces. What is the situation with the previous generation of fighter jets of the US military? It can be said that 100 flowers bloom, and there are many varieties. In general, it can be divided into 2 categories, large military aircraft and small military aircraft. Large-scale military aircraft include B-2, B-52, B-1B, a large number of early warning aircraft, EP-3, etc., tanker aircraft, and transport aircraft, C-17, C-130, etc. At the same time, European countries in NATO have also developed a variety of large military aircraft. Even Israel has developed a Falcon early warning aircraft, which is more advanced than that of the US military. There are more small military aircraft, F-117 stealth fighter, F-15 heavy air fighter, F-16 light fighter, A-10 Warthog ground attack aircraft, F-14 Tomcat, F/A-18 large Hornet carrier aircraft. Other countries in NATO have also developed a wide variety of fighters, such as the Mirage 2000 and Rafale of France, the Gripen of Sweden, the Typhoon F-2000 of the United Kingdom, and the famous fixed-wing Harrier fighter that can take off and land vertically. The US military is still here based on the improved AB-8A, AB-8B Harrier fighters, Israeli Warriors, Japanese F-2. At that time, the F-22 in the United States was still under research and development. The project was launched in 1985, and it relied on the original inertia to go to the 21st century and installed 198 planes side by side. What is the thing that came out after the US military began a major strategic change of self-death? It is the famous F-35 Lightning fighter. It was in 1993 that the US Department of Defense launched the Joint Advanced Attack Technology JASF Demonstrator Research, and in January 1994 established the JASF Research Program Office. In March 1996, the U.S. Navy's Joint Strike Fighter JAF program and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency's Common Low-Cost Lightweight Fighter CAF program were successfully integrated within the U.S. military. The JASF program was officially renamed Joint Strike Fighter JSF, Joint Strike Fighter. On November 16, 1996, the JSF project was officially launched. This is the beginning of the U.S. Air Force's self-defeating and lonely seeking of defeat. Obviously, F-35's ambitious and very successful strategic goal is, not only to unify the world of the U.S. Army, Navy, and Air Force, but also to unify the world of NATO and even all U.S. allies. The F-35 is an all-round fighter. It adopts an aerodynamic structure design, and only 3 models of a series of different improvements are enough to conquer the world. What is its design philosophy? Under the absolute premise of seeking defeat alone, it is impossible for any hostile country to pose a threat to the U.S. military and NATO's skies. Relying on the lower stealth capability than the F-22, thus lower cost, it is impossible for any hostile country to be able to detect it, let alone the issue of air contest. Therefore, the F-35 basically does not need air combat capabilities. It only needs to consider how to bully enemies on the ground and see more comfortably. It can actually take off and land vertically. From the beginning of the project design, F-35 is a downward step on the basis of F-22, but in American words, it is to achieve the strategic goal of totalitarian, unified planned economic system. F-35A, Air Force type. No need to consider close combat, just medium-range air-to-air missiles. The maximum speed is only Mach 1.6, and the maneuverability is only comparable to that of the F-16. F-35B, short/vertical takeoff and landing type. The tail nozzle can be rotated 90 degrees downward to realize vertical takeoff and landing. F-35C, the Navy's aircraft carrier type. Wings are foldable with tail hooks. Comparison of F-35A/B/C3 fighters. Because I have to do everything, I want to do everything, but I don't do everything very well. Lightning turns into fat electricity turns into fat goose, and fat goose turns into roast goose. The F-35 is really too successful. The United States not only successfully fooled its own military and arms to stop making their own fighters, but also successfully fooled all NATO countries to stop making their own fighters and all only by F-35. How could such a highly totalitarian and monopolistic planned economic system have good results? The delivery of the first F-35 began in 2011, and nearly 1,000 have been produced by the end of 2022. All other original NATO fighters are no longer maintained and upgraded. Before the F-35 was delivered in 2011, the F-22 production line was also dismantled to show its determination. Director Zhang of the War and Ignorance Bureau admitted frankly that he fooled the Americans into dismantling the F-22, because it was rumored that China was developing the J-14 stealth fighter, but Director Zhang said that was not the case. The reason why the United States will dismantle F-22 is of course not just listening to Director Zhang's strategic flicker. Because in order to realize the super grand strategy of F-35 domination of the world, so that all NATO countries can rest assured to only buy F-35, the US military itself must also make a firm statement to abandon F-22. This is an issue of right and wrong on the development path of Tugu-Kaimbai, and there cannot be any ambiguity. Taking a step back, even if the US military keeps the F-22 production line and does not dismantle it, can it change the reality of today's air power comparison between China and the United States? Basically nothing will change. Because this is not a problem of the production line, but a problem of the technical system. Is it really that difficult if the United States rebuilds one or more F-22 production lines? Some people say that it costs too much money and is not worthwhile. Come on? How could this be the reason? If it is really necessary, build another production line according to the mature drawings. Even if you spend a little more money, where can you get more? Isn't the production line for all new fighters new? Annual output of F-35. Because after the first flight of China's J-20 in 2011, the United States should have found that it was going in the wrong direction. But it can only bite the bullet and go on, because the technical route has been decided, and there is no way to turn back. It can only put F-35 into mass production and installation as soon as possible. Moreover, even if F-22 builds a new production line to continue production improvement, it will not be able to fundamentally change the fact that it has a structural disadvantage with the Chinese Air Force's continuous expansion. Because the J-20 is an air superior fighter designed for the US military F-22, it is impossible for the latter to be a one-handed opponent of the F-20 when it competes with the F-35. Because it is impossible for the F-35 to imagine it from the very beginning of the design. Fighters of this level like F-22 are fighting and have the possibility of winning. What were the catastrophic consequences of the F-35? It not only completely wiped out the possibility of the US military competing with China in fighter jets, but also completely wiped out the ability of the entire NATO to compete with Chinese fighter jets. Now there is constant news that the United Kingdom and others want to skip the 5th generation fighters and directly develop 6th generation fighters. Pull it down. You have never worked on a 5th generation machine. How can you have the technical foundation to develop a 6th generation machine? China successfully flew the J-20 fighter for the first time at 1:11 p.m. on January 11, 2011. The time was just a few hours after the then U.S. Secretary of Defense Gates visited China and before the F-35 entered mass production. The first flight of the J-20 was successful. For the F-22, which is also an air superior fighter, it is difficult to clearly distinguish it from the J-20 in terms of air combat capabilities. However, after the development of the J-20's two-seater fighter, one J-20's two-seater fighter can simultaneously lead and command multiple, 3 to 6, Attack 11 stealth drones as a loyal wingman combat system. This is the formation for a show. In a real battle, the Attack 11 will be in the front, and the J-20s will be commanded from far behind. On October 1, 2019, the Attack 11 UAV was officially unveiled for the first time at the military parade for the 70th anniversary of the National Day. Of course, China is far more than this drone, or even a loyal wingman like the Attack 11. Pterodactyl series, Tianlong series, Flying Dragon series, Rainbow series, Bihang series, Falcon series, No Detection series, Fighter series, High-Tech series, Kongbu series, War Eagle series, Yuanhang series, Pioneer series, Honglong series, Qianlong series. Not to mention the DJI drones that have repeatedly insisted that they are only for civilian use, but are heavily equipped by foreign forces, including the US military, accounting for more than 80% of the global civilian market. How many types of drones are there in China? Let me tell you how many manufacturers are developing and producing drones, at least tens of thousands. If you combine Dragon, Fly, Eagle and Air, these words, you can search it on the internet, and it may be a brand of Chinese drones. This is not 100 flowers bloom, but 1,000 flowers bloom. Let me tell you this, even if no one in the Chinese military who specializes in drone research can fully explain it, how can you, the US military, figure it out? What is the result that is not clear? How do you deal with so many drones, loitering bombs, flying grenades, and cross-media drones of different types, different technologies, different gameplays, and different tactics in wartime? The CH-817 micro-attack drone known as the Flying Grenade. China's loitering missile launch system. Loyal Wingman was proposed by the US military and should belong to the technical system of the 5.5 generation fighter concept. However, a large number of concepts in the US military are just concepts, but China has already turned them into reality. The stealth performance of the Attack 11 unmanned fighter will definitely be much higher than that of the F-22, B-2, and J-20, especially for the F-35. Because it is much smaller in size, it does not need a prominent manned cockpit, and adopts a flying wing structure with the best stealth performance, etc., which can achieve the ultimate stealth performance, and the cost is much lower. This will enable the Chinese Air Force to form a generational advantage over all small military aircraft, F-22, F-35, of the US military. A large group of Attack 11 UAVs will wipe out all the F-22s, F-35s, early warning aircraft, tankers, and even B-2, B-21, and traditional strategic bombers of the US military. At most, the US military will only fight some Chinese the Attack 11 UAV, not even the shadow of the J-20 can be found. Therefore, even if it is not zero casualties in terms of weapons and equipment, in terms of personnel, the People's Liberation Army is fully capable of achieving one-way massacres against the US military with zero casualties. F-22 and F-35 did not consider the two-seater design from the beginning of the design, and the mechanical structure of the airframe is doomed that it cannot be upgraded to this capability. To realize the same loyal wingman system, it is necessary to design a brand new fighter, which will be fatal, and it will be impossible to achieve it without more than 10 years. Of course, based on the official number B-21 of LRSB, Long-Range Strike Bomber, announced by U.S. Air Force Secretary Deborah Lee James on February 26, 2016, it is also possible to develop a loyal wingman systematic. Even the loyal wingman that a single B-21 can command can be far more than the J-20S because of its larger platform. But this is a bit tricky. The fundamental purpose of the B-21 is strategic bombing, not air combat. The B-21 is basically a simplified version of the B-2, which is similar to the downward approach of the F-35. By then, if the US military catches up with China in the loyal wingman system, will it be enough to balance the Air Force? Of course not. Because China is running at full speed and constantly surpassing China's 6th-generation fighter jets exposed by CCTV. If only the 6th-generation fighters that are being talked about internationally are here, the problem is that what China has exposed is not only the 6th-generation fighters, but the real Star Wars-level aerospace fighters. The Nantianmen Project series products exhibited at the Zhuhai Air Show in November 2022 are really incredible. The total length is 242 meters, the wingspan is 682 meters, the empty weight is 47,200 tons, the standard mission weight is 112,800 tons, and the maximum lift-off weight is 122,900 tons. This data is still full and zero. These data already completely overwhelm all the largest aircraft carriers currently in service in the US military, and are 10,000 tons heavier than the largest US aircraft carrier, the USS Ford. This makes people feel that China's military capabilities no longer regard the US military as a target, but the Hollywood of the United States as a target to catch up and surpass. Whether others believe it or not, if someone asks me whether I believe it or not, as a pure science moderator, I can only say don't know. If this thing really wants to fly, how powerful is the engine power? The key is how big is the power-to-weight ratio of the engine? Just a simple calculation to understand, it can only use nuclear power. If you want to say it's impossible, it's not necessarily true. If you say it is possible, to what extent has China's nuclear power technology broken through? The nuclear power floating on the ocean has not been actually used yet, and everyone is thinking about letting it fly into the sky. To let this thing fly into the sky, how much air pressure does the ground of the airport have to withstand when an aerospace aircraft carrier takes off? Is this Luanyao, some people write it as chaotic bird, or is it talking nonsense? Of course, the official later clarified, Nantianmen Project is a live-action immersive experience activity specially created by AVIC Global Culture for this Air Force Open Day. Its purpose is to popularize aerospace knowledge. The H-20 that I have been thinking about, is it possible for Tian Tian to become Mrs. Niu before she was born? The problem is, believe it or not, the aerospace aircraft carrier Luanyao is not a product technology, but a series of supporting product technologies. Chixiao, Yuing, Chenying, Beatty, Suin. Each one is more mysterious than the other. But the Beatty aerospace fighter among them is not like a science fiction, but a real fighter. The physical White Emperor aerospace fighter exhibited at the Zhuhai Air Show. The CG map of the Suin aerospace fighter of the Nantianmen Project. The specific design parameters of the Suin aerospace fighter of the Nantianmen Project are as follows. Captain, 24.6 meters, wingspan, 14.1 meters, empty weight, 23.9 tons, standard mission weight, 47.2 tons, maximum takeoff weight, 51.9 tons, cruising speed, in the atmosphere Mach 2.34, maximum speed, in the atmosphere 4.8 Mach, maximum mission speed, outside the atmosphere second cosmic speed, single mission period, 14 days, carry pulse particle accelerator pods and a variety of guided weapons. Many media outlets even introduced that the Nantiaman project will be officially launched in 2043. The main purpose of this plan is to prevent the risk of alien civilization invasion and asteroids hitting the Earth. Didn't take the US military seriously at all. If you say this is pure science fiction, but the display board clearly states that the White Emperor Advanced Air Combat System has completed its test flight. Mixing sci-fi with real products can be mind-boggling and dizzying. Let's talk about the MD-22 Ming DY Wide Area Aircraft. According to the public introduction at the Zhuhai Air Show, the technical parameters of the MD-22 aircraft are: the body length is 10.8 meters, the width is 4.5 meters, the height is 1.6 meters, the maximum takeoff weight is 4 tons, of which the payload is 1 ton, the maximum speed is Mach 7, which is equivalent to twice the speed of the American State Route 71 Blackbird reconnaissance aircraft. The cruising range can reach 8,000 kilometers. It can complete stable circling and strong maneuvering flight under high-speed conditions with 6G overload. In addition, the propaganda that too advanced and inconvenient to display was broadcast in the media a long time ago, which will inevitably make the US military feel confused. The suborbital vehicle officially announced on July 16, 2021 as too advanced to display. Associated with this is the Low Earth Orbit Bomber, FOBS, which can achieve 20 times the speed of sound penetration and a global 1-hour strike, another concept proposed by the US military and an example of China's realization. It can directly fly to the outer space above the heads of the United States and NATO countries, and in addition to all its existing anti-aircraft missile strike capabilities, it can directly carry out one-way massacres above their heads. The research and development process of these new concept fighters in China is basically equivalent to the B-21 of the US military. On March 4, 2022, the first prototype of the B-21 began ground testing. In March 2023, the US military announced that the B-21 will make its first flight in 2023. It is planned to start to form combat effectiveness in 2030, and it is planned to eventually equip 100 aircraft. But when the B-21 is officially installed in the US military, what it will face is not the J-20 or the H-20, but China's aerospace fighters, suborbital bombers, and wide-area aircraft, or the fate of being slaughtered in one direction. Low Earth Orbit Bombing, FOBS, versus ICBM orbit comparison. Of course, these are not the capabilities of a single weapon, but include various types of early warning aircraft, active phased array radar, anti-stealth radar, anti-drone combat system, Changguang satellite, tanker, etc. Not only in the air combat system, but also in core technologies such as engines, China is also rapidly making comprehensive breakthroughs. Not only are traditional turbofan, scramjet and other engines used on a large scale, but they are also the latest type. The pulse detonation wave engine that needs to be used in practical aerospace fighters has also made effective progress ahead of the United States. Chinese detonation engine. There are many types of detonation engines. The models tested in other countries basically use hydrogen as fuel in order to pursue a higher fuel ratio. Hydrogen is relatively easier to ignite, and the technical difficulty is relatively low. But the price is high and the risk of explosion is easy. The research team of the Chinese Academy of Sciences used RP3 fuel, which is equivalent to aviation kerosene. More importantly, it is not only the Chinese Academy of Sciences team that has made breakthroughs in detonation engines in China. The Detonation Propulsion and Aerospace Flight jointly established by the Industrial Technology Research Institute of Chongqing University and Chongqing Thrust-to-Weight Power Technology Co., Limited, referred to as Thrust-to-Weight Ratio Technology Research Center, the 1000 N kerosene fuel continuous rotary detonation engine developed by it also successfully completed the first ignition test run on March 21, 2023. The air combat capabilities of the United States and NATO have basically been hanged on the F-35 tree. This is an overwhelming and comprehensive victory of China's market economic system in terms of military technology, compared to the totalitarian and unified planned economic system of the United States. 3. Fully moved towards anti-aircraft carrier, water-drip ballistic, hypersonic, one-way massacre missile technology. Faced with the huge pressure of the 11 U.S. aircraft carriers, China must first solve the anti-aircraft carrier capability. The DF-21B anti-aircraft carrier ballistic missile displayed for the first time at the military parade commemorating the 70th anniversary of the victory of the anti-Japanese war on September 3, 2015 is the first anti-aircraft carrier weapon that China can kill the U.S. military in one direction. Its range can reach about 1,500 km. Prior to this, China's anti-ship missiles could only be said to pose a threat to the US Navy, but they could not be said to have the ability to kill in one direction. After that, China's sharp weapons that can kill the US Navy in one direction continue to emerge. Compared with the DF-21D that has been circulated in the rivers and lakes for a long time, the DF-26 that was suddenly revealed at the military parade on the 70th anniversary of the victory of the anti-Japanese war is more exciting. It not only has the same anti-aircraft carrier capability as the DF-21D, but also has a range of up to 5,000 kilometers. This means that the US military no longer has security within the entire second island chain with Guam, 3,000 kilometers away from China, as its core. If the DF-21D and DF-26 US military still have the theoretical possibility of anti-missile, then the appearance of the DF-17, with a range of 1,800 to 2,500 kilometers, that was first publicized at the 70th anniversary of the National Day Parade on October 1, 2019 is another huge leap. This kind of hypersonic weapon using water-drip ballistics, developed on the basis of GN Suisen's ballistics, it is theoretically impossible for the existing equipment of the US military to have any defensive capabilities. Once China has mastered the anti-aircraft carrier, water-drip ballistic and hypersonic technologies, then combining them with the original missile technology, it can develop an endless variety of anti-ship weapons that can form a one-way massacre against the US Navy. CM-401 Hypersonic Anti-Ship Missile. It was first demonstrated at the Zhuhai Air Show on November 6, 2018, with a range of about 290 kilometers. Eagle Strike 21, the first anti-ship missile with hypersonic water-drifting ballistic. In April 2022, it will be released for the first time on the occasion of Navy Day. Ship-to-ship and air-to-ship methods can be used to slaughter the US Navy in one direction. The firing range is 1,000 to 1,500 kilometers. Dongfeng 27 is still in the state of legend in the world. The key is that its range is up to 8,000 kilometers, which basically makes the US military no longer safe in the entire third island chain in the Pacific Ocean. Obviously, ballistic missiles that can cover the entire Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean with hypersonic speed, water-drifting ballistics, and anti-aircraft carrier ballistic missiles are a matter of course. Within 10 years, no matter where the US aircraft carrier is in the world, the Chinese People's Liberation Army will have the ability to kill it in one direction. And this kind of military capability is far more than just a type of ballistic missile. Suborbital bombers are also a type. In addition, there are H-20 and Eagle Strike 21 carried on the 055 platform. Because of the anti-ship missiles with one-way massacres, in theory, as long as the Chinese Navy dispatches a 055, it can hide outside the combat radius of the US aircraft carrier battle group, and use a large number of Eagles to attack 21 pairs of warships in a zero-casualty combat method. The entire two aircraft carrier battle groups of the United States formed a one-way massacre. Or the task of traditional surface-to-surface missiles is handed over to rocket launchers. A lot has been said on this internet, and the jokes with a range of 300 kilometers and an error of 1,700 kilometers are also flying all over the sky. But objectively speaking, the range error is really not that big. The PHL-03 previously installed by the People's Liberation Army has a range of 70 kilometers, and the range extended version is 150 kilometers. The latest model PHL-191, formerly known as PHL-16, which is a self-use model of AR-3 foreign trade products, installed now has a range of 300 kilometers, and the error is at most 200 kilometers. Although the range error is relatively large, the circular probability error of hitting the target is much smaller than that of surface-to-surface missiles. In addition, the Guardian series, Condor series, and AR series, these three models were not adopted by the Chinese military when they were initially tendered, and the winning bid was the PHL-03 model. As a result, the three manufacturers who did not win the bid engaged in foreign trade versions. Through the continuous improvement of foreign trade models, the AR-3 among them has become the latest version of our Army's rocket launcher. It is another more classic story of the victory of the market economy. There is also the State Route 5 foreign trade version of the rocket launcher. Any Chinese rocket launcher series can be used to beat the US military's M142 Seahorse rocket launcher. Because the US military has mainly relied on air supremacy in land warfare for a long time, it has never paid special attention to missiles and rocket launchers. China, on the other hand, has a long tradition of attaching great importance to missiles and rocket launchers. Therefore, this technology tree series began to diverge not 30 years ago, but more than half a century ago. China not only developed a lack of firepower phobia during the war to resist US aggression and aid Korea, but also extremely loved the almost unique ground firepower advantage brought by Katyusha rocket launchers. In addition, Jian Suisun, the world's top missile expert, could be recruited from the United States after the founding of the People's Republic of China. Don't think that he is just the father of Chinese missiles. You must understand that Jian Suisun is also the father of American rockets, missiles, and jets. He is the most advanced missile expert in these fields. Basic theory, the founder of engineering cybernetics. With this talent resource as the foundation, China will maintain its dominant position in the field of missile technology for a long time. In recent years, it has been carried forward to the extreme. Americans or many of the public may think that the strength of the US military is the density of firepower, but this has long been an old calendar. If you ask Chinese veterans who participated in the self-defense counterattack against Vietnam what the firepower density of the People's Liberation Army was when they fought, they will tell you that Van Vliet's ammunition volume is a joke. The Vietnamese army on the battlefield claimed that they had been fighting with the US military for so long and had never encountered such fierce artillery fire. The firepower preparation of the PLA will not hear the bomb explosion sound that people imagined, but has turned the original discrete explosion sound into a completely continuous sound. If you want to experience what kind of sound it is recommended that you buy more than 30 firecrackers with 1,000 rings during the Spring Festival, and remember to set them off at the same time to listen to it. Basically, this is the sound. Seeing the state of the Russo-Ukrainian War, some Americans fantasized about using street fighting to stop the People's Liberation Army in a possible Chinese unification war. Pull it down. Where will there be any street fighting if the PLA wants to attack the city? If there is an enemy blocking the alley, the entire alley will disappear in an instant. The best way to solve street fighting is not to destroy the enemies in the alley, but to directly destroy the alley with a sky-defying firepower density. Go and see the cities that fought in the Russo-Ukrainian War, which one was not destroyed in the end. Since it is going to be destroyed and cleared up, why not just carry out overall demolition as soon as it comes up?